Hello and welcome to Leaders Communicate Clearly. Today's guest speaker is Chris Fenning. Chris Fenning believes that everyone can communicate clearly if they have the right framework. Chris is the award-winning author of the business communication book, The First Minute, How to Start Conversations That Get Results. Now, if Chris isn't working, he's wandering around Europe with his beautiful wife, enjoying the sights, sounds, and the scenery, and just totally enjoying his life. And I'm happy to hear that. But I have a question for Chris. How is starting a conversation clearly important? And what do we need to know about it?
Well, first, thank you for having me on today. I'm really pleased that we can talk about this for the listeners in this summit. So, how can we start communicating clearly, and why is it important? Well, the how I think we'll come to in some more detail in a few questions time, but it all starts with the first things that you say in a conversation. And the reason the first few lines that you say in a conversation are important is they underpin and set the foundation for everything else that comes next. So you just asked me a question, and if it had taken you 4 or 5 sentences to get to the question, and if the question wasn't quite clear, I might not have answered what you wanted me to answer. I might not have understood the question. And we'd have spent some time sort of unpacking things and trying to get to the point of what it is you wanted to ask and wanted me to say. And all of that takes time. All of that creates confusion. And if the conversation or even emails and meetings start clearly to begin with, you set a really good foundation for everything that comes afterwards.
Okay, well, is there a system or a process that can be put in place if, there's a saying, we don't know what we don't know. But if I wanted to move myself into a direction so that I could start getting my communications down, what kind of process could I use? Is there like a sequence of events or any place I should go, listen to, talk to, deal with? What do I need to write down? How do I make it happen?
So there is a very simple framework you can use to start conversations, phone calls, emails, and meetings. And it's called framing. It's a simple 3-part process. And framing involves providing context, providing intent, and delivering a key message. If you can deliver those 3 things in about 10 to 15 seconds, you will have set up your conversation with a far greater chance of being successful. Can I take a minute to explain what those 3 things are?
Okay, so if we were to take this framework and put it together, is it good in different venues, different avenues? Can a parent use it when they're talking to their family over about something that's important, or significant other, their children? Is this good for entrepreneurs or business executives? And is there anything different that I would need to know for each one of these different demographics, or are they all the same?
They are not all the same. So this method works particularly well in a business environment because most business communication is transactional. Yes, there's a human element, absolutely, relationship building and sort of human interaction and empathy. That's part of communication. But when it comes to work, whether you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, an employee, graduate just starting out, when you're working, most of our work is transactional. We want to give information, receive information, explain why there's a problem, get input from people. And all of that type of communication needs to be set up so that the person you're talking to knows what that conversation or that topic is going to be about, which is where the framing comes in, providing context, which is the topic that you want to talk about, providing intent. This is why I'm talking to you. I need you to know this. I need your help. I need you to take an action. I'm looking for a decision. So why am I telling you something? It's very important for you to then know what to do with it and how to respond. And then the key message, it's like the headline. The first 2 things a news anchor would say when describing news is a headline that helps you understand everything else that will come afterwards in the story. And that framing, I'm still talking about the business environment at the moment, that framing helps the other person know what the topic is, why you are talking to them, and a headline as to what the topic is going to be about, so that they can then understand what to do and how to respond to the rest of the conversation. Now, for families and relationships, when I wrote this book, The First Minute, I actually started it by saying, this is not for relationships. This is just for work. Because my area of specialty is not interpersonal relationships and families. But what I found fascinating was the feedback that I would get from friends, from colleagues, from people, strangers who'd read the book, was how they were finding ways to apply it at home when communicating with partners. And in one particular case, I know a company that helps families who have challenging relationships with their children. They gave this framework to the parents as a way to start a conversation about a challenging topic and stick to the facts so they didn't become overwhelmed by the emotion of it, the fear of a situation, the anger or frustration, or just the general overwhelmingness of a challenging relationship with a child, or planning for a major event that's happening that could have significant consequences on the family. It's easy for emotion to take hold. And they were telling me that this framework helped people get the conversation started in a clear way. So they didn't lead with the emotion, they led with something a little bit more structured. So they were able to get into the conversation. So I'm fascinated and thrilled that this is helpful in different situations, written for business, but it's finding its place in other situations as well.
Well, doesn't that make sense, though? It seems like communication should be a constant. We should be able to communicate clearly in a constant level, regardless of who we're talking to. Because I do personally remember way back when, I had my dad hat on, I had my Army drill sergeant hat on, I had my businessman's hat on, and trying to communicate in different venues, I lost track of who I am. And I wasn't necessarily saying the right thing at the right time because I don't know what I'm thinking about. And once I put it all on one plateau, it was much clearer for me. So that's sort of what you're saying. This is how families can use it, businesses can use it. They can clarify everything by using similar or same framework.
In a manner of speaking, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it's one size fits all, because it's a bit of a it depends answer, but every communication situation is different. And as an example, my wife does not like it when I start some conversations with this framework, but she does like it if I'm trying to explain something. I'm sort of trying to gather my thoughts or explain something that's new or complicated, maybe related to my work, maybe relating to, I'd like to take the family on this particular event. Here's why and how it's unusual. Rather than me fumbling my way through the topic, she likes it when I use the framework because I come across clearly in those situations. But if we're dealing with something on a more relationship level, emotional level, it's not a great framework because it's very direct.
Okay, so you might be saying, depending on the context of the conversation, regardless who you're talking to, it can be very well because it's very direct.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're trying to achieve a particular outcome, so disaster planning, if it's time for the family to sit down and work out what is our evacuation plan, you've got everyone together. They know roughly what the topic is going to be, but starting the conversation of, okay, this evening I want to talk about preparing our go bags. I'd like all of your input as to what you think we should put in the bags. That would help in that situation. It wouldn't help when trying to find stuffed bunny for daughter's bedtime, but for that more practical based discussions with your family, it can be very helpful to get everybody on the same page and focused on the same outcome.
Okay, so we can use them similarity, but okay, so let's back up into the business of the entrepreneurs who need a very direct communication to have a very direct, specific outcome, which the family can use it sometimes. So how do we layer that? What is the layer of that sandwich we're going to be putting together? What's the top piece of bread? And we're going to put some condiments on it and some meat and cheeses. And how do we work our way through that as a sequence of events to make this happen for us?
So how would an entrepreneur apply this in their day-to-day conversations?
Right.
All right. So if an entrepreneur was working with a team, communicating with a team, letting them know what you want to do, you've got all of that in your head. The entrepreneur, anyone in business, in fact, when they start a conversation, they know what the topic is. I want to talk about this thing. I want Jeff and Emma to do something specific. But when we start communicating, the other person has no idea at all what that topic is or why we're talking to them. They're starting either, best case, they're starting with a blank slate. Worst case, they're starting with assumptions about the conversation that are incorrect. So I want to talk to them about next month's spending allowance. They think I want to talk to them about next week's team meeting. We're already on different pages. So when I start communicating, when the entrepreneur, the business owner, the employee starts communicating, they need to recognize they have to set a level of information so everyone's starting from the same page. And the way that starts is after you've done the greeting and say, hey, Daniel, how are you doing? Did you have a great weekend? Sport. The human interaction occurs. And then the moment we want to talk about work, I'd say, okay, so for the work topic, this is the topic I want to talk about. Name the topic, 3 to 5 words. I want to talk about next month's budget. I want to talk about last week's team meeting. I want to talk about the Jefferson account. Naming a topic, that's the context. Now, you know straight away, I want to talk about the budget or the team meeting or the Jefferson account. Everything else that was in your head has gone out.
So we want to preface what it is that the conversation is going to be about.
Yes.
So that way the listener can clue in what we're talking about. They'll have an idea.
Yes. And they're not mixing up the topics.
Then we start moving out from there. Okay, so we're having a conversation. We've did the introductories. I've outlined here's what this conversation is intended for. Now, where do I move from there to carry that conversation to its conclusion?
All right, so you've said, here's the topic and here's why I'm talking to you. So the second part was intent. I want to talk to you because I need your input for who's going to speak on a particular topic. If we're talking about the team meeting, who's going to talk about topic ABC? And then you can give a key message of, I don't have the list of people who are attending and I don't know who can talk about that topic. So it's a headline that sets up the discussion. You now know that the next thing I'm going to talk about is about finding the right person to speak on a topic during the team meeting. Once I've done that, we then get into the conversation. And the next natural stage after me doing sort of 10 seconds of intro is I would ask my question, or I would give a little bit more background. And you have an opportunity to ask a question. If you didn't understand that framing, you can ask to clarify. Oh, hang on, which team meeting are we talking about? Or which of the 3 topics? Or why don't you have the list of people that are attending? Then we get into the meat and potatoes, the middle bit of the conversation. And that can go in all sorts of different directions. It's like the middle of a chess game. You can't plan out what happens in the middle. You can plan your beginning and you can know how they end. So you introduce the conversation well, then the conversation flows, hopefully keeping on track for that goal and that output that you want for the conversation, which was what you stated in the framing. Trying to find a name for who's going to talk about this topic in the meeting. That's your signpost for bringing the conversation back. If it's gone off on a tangent or got another rabbit hole, you can say, hang on, I still need to answer my main question. And then when you want to wrap up the conversation, you can return to the framing to say, great, thank you. Now I know who's going to talk about this topic at the team meeting next week. So you get to bookend or beginning and end and bracket your conversation, and you have that framing to help you keep on topic and keep on track as you go through that conversation.
Okay, so as the initiator of the conversation, I know what I want to talk about. Is it in my best interest to maybe map out, like even bullet point out or write out what I want, but not a script? I don't want to make a script, but at least have an idea in my head where to go so I don't diverge off into some other yah-yah land?
Yes, and yes to both bits. Having an idea what you want to talk about is great, and it helps keep you on track and make a very efficient conversation, and not scripting it. When we script things, we then put more effort into trying to remember the script rather than remember what we're trying to achieve from the conversation. Plus, who has time to script everything that we want? We all have time to jot down 2 bullet points, but we don't have time to script a conversation, particularly if you bump into someone or you grab them in a few minutes you weren't expecting. So bullet points, great. Scripting, not great.
Okay, so it's interesting. As the initiator of the conversation, though, even though I'm the one who's trying to put out the information because I have an end result I want to accomplish, I don't just lecture. I'm not just going to sit here and sit down and give you a whole monologue and now you're going to comply with what I say. How do we get that interaction going to make sure that they, whoever they are, know and understand what we're talking about and that they're clear on our intent and what direction we're going? Can we make that happen?
Yes, asking questions. It's a very broad answer, but asking questions. You can introduce them right at the beginning. After you've framed the conversation, you can put what's called a validation checkpoint, saying, does this make sense? Do you want to clarify anything before we get into the topic? And that gives them a chance to say, sorry, I'm actually late for something, I have to go, if they don't have a chance to talk. Or, oh, I'm not the right person to talk to about this, you need to talk to Sajid. There are lots of ways they can respond. So that's one example of immediately using a question to validate that your conversation is with the right person at the right time and going to get you what you need. And then as you go through the body of the conversation, particularly if a topic is complex, pausing and asking if they have any questions or if they'd like you to clarify something or if it makes sense. Simple questions of, does that make sense? Am I on the right track? And you'll get a nod or a shake or a yes or a no. And then you have an opportunity to fix whatever isn't clear in the conversation. So questions are the key, and they can be so simple.
So we do want two-way communication. We want to speak clearly or identify and clarify our intent, and then determine whether that's being received well and how it's going to be done. Okay, so now we're moving through the flow of the conversation. We're coming to what might be the conclusion. The individual has been able to sit with us for the entire moment, whatever that moment might be. And now how do we close this out? What is our plan of action to close it out to get a call to action here?
Well, again, it's an it depends answer, which but I will try and give some examples. It'll depend whether the conversation has been successful. And success has a couple of different measures. One is, did you get what you needed? So if you were asking for help, did you get the help? If you were, imagine asking for someone for directions and not getting the directions, that's not a satisfactory conclusion. But if you find out they don't know the directions, like, okay, we've ended our interaction, I'll go and ask somebody else. So getting what you want, or at least knowing what your next step is, one way to end it. If you've had a more complex discussion, you can end it with a summary. So I just want to check that I'm leaving with the same information as you. We wanted to do X. Our plan is ABC, and I'm going to do this by tomorrow. So you can restate who's going to do what and when, any decisions that are made in a few lines. And if you get the nod from the other person, then you've got a good confirmation that you're both leaving with a same or very similar understanding.
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing now, if we're going to have a conversation with somebody and we feel like this is an important conversation, we do want to have an idea what we're talking about.
Yes.
We want to clarify that idea as soon as possible in the conversation so the individual hears us and understands what direction we're going. And that gives them an opportunity to engage or disengage based on what's happening at the moment.
Yes. Yeah.
Follow through with whatever our points of contention might be. And then at the closing, get some sort of call to action. Are we going to do something about this? We're going to move forward, or we're going to back up, or what have you. And then at that point, the conversation may be over until it gets picked up or carried through in the future.
Yes. Yep. And there's one bit I would add, which is sometimes it's okay just to finish the conversation with thanks, goodbye. So
okay.
If it's really obvious you've achieved what you needed, you don't have to go through a formal summary of, now let me run through the minutes of our corridor conversation. Sometimes a great thanks, see you next week, or some casual ending. But the more complicated the topic, the more urgent or important it is, the more important it is to have that summary at the end to make sure you really are leaving with the same understanding.
So depending on the complexity of the topic and the urgency of the topic will also depend on the type of feedback we want from the individual, right? We don't want them to just, yes, nod their head and smile. We want them to be clearly precise on what it is that our expectations of them, and they're going to respond to that, right? Give us a sort of a verbal report. Yes,
a verbal report. And hopefully in that conversation, you've talked about timeframes. So, hey, I need this report, or hey, we need to get our go bags ready. If you're in the family scenario for planning, we need to make sure this is ready. And everyone goes, yeah, okay, we'll do that. And you're thinking, we need it by 5 o'clock tonight because the hurricane's just off the coast and has changed direction. And they're thinking, sure, I'll get that done maybe next week or Wednesday. And like, your time frames are really different. Everyone's nodding. So you've got very different outcomes from that. So the more urgent the topic, the more critical including very clear time frames is.
Okay. So as we're speaking with somebody, is it important at any level, way, shape, or form to let that individual take over the conversation?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And it will depend on circumstances. If I go and ask my boss for help, then I'm making it clear what I need, but I shouldn't be rigidly controlling that conversation, not just because they're my boss, but I'm asking them for help. as long as the information they're giving me is answering my need, I'm free to just, they're free to say what they're going to say. And when you end up with more than one-to-one, so we're doing group discussions, that's where facilitation comes in rather than controlling. If your message is a monologue, then it's a stand on stage, deliver, then it's not a conversation. And right. It's either a presentation or it could have been an email, because people are just receiving the info and they could do that in writing as well as listening. But if you're having a discussion, unless there is a really critical reason that you have to control, David, you speak now, Daniel, you speak now, Sarah, you speak now, there are very few situations in which that is appropriate. For the most part, it's, hey, everybody, we're trying to achieve this goal. This is what we need to do. Our intention for this conversation. Here's the topic we're going to be talking about. And then it becomes that dynamic where different people talk. The only time you keep sort of hold of that control stick is if the conversation is really going off onto something that's not relevant and doesn't help you achieve the goal for the conversation. Then you bring it back in and say, hey, folks, I think we're moving onto a different topic. Let's bring it back to our original goal. That's where you keep your hand on the control, but you don't rigidly control every part of a conversation.
Okay, so while having the conversation and engaging people, if somebody gets off tangent, totally out of left field into some subject that we're not even discussing, it's as the instigator or the arbitrator of the conversation, we want to reel them back in to get on track, and we'll discuss that later. That'll be a whole different conversation, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so what if, because of the complexity of whatever we're talking about, there are multiple points that need to be brought up? Do we mix that deck up and shuffle them out, or do we like take the queens and the kings and the jacks and separate them, and we'll deal with them as they need to be dealt with?
Separate is usually better. Even when the topics interrelate, separate is usually better. And this is where framing the conversation is even more important. So if we wanted to, if I called you up and just started talking about a topic, you would only know that I'm talking about a topic. If I have two more queued up behind, you have no idea until I bring them up. But if I'd framed the conversation, said, hey, Daniel, I want to talk to you about 3 things today. I'd like to talk to you about the interview we're having later. We've got a document we've got to put out, and maybe drinks next week. I've just framed the conversation, told you there are 3 topics, and told you what the topics are, but not gone into the detail on any of them. It took me 10 seconds. You now know there are 3 things coming your way. You know what they are. We can then talk about topic number 1, have that conversation, and then I can say, great. So the second thing I wanted to talk about was the interview we're having later. Let's talk about that. And then we have that conversation because the intent should have been made clear. I want to talk to you about the interview later. I'm not sure what time it is. Let's talk through that. Then, great. I know the interview is now at 3 o'clock. The last bit is, do you want to catch up for drinks next week? And I'm free on Wednesday. And then we talk about that topic. So frame the conversation, say how many topics you have, what are the intents for each of them, and then have 3 separate conversations. And even if they relate, it's still 3 separate conversations.
Okay, so it all boils down to almost the same framework here. We're going to identify what we're talking about. If we're talking about one item, fine. But if the one item contains 3 items, we outline that in the beginning. That way everybody knows what direction we're going, and we stay on track. We do not deviate. Based on those subjects, we might have more bullet points or further outline them to cover what we want to cover.
Yep.
We make sure we get feedback on the specific point at the moment. We move through our list, so to speak, until there's a conclusion.
Yes. And there's a benefit. There's an extra bonus. If I came to you and said, hey, I've got 3 things I want to talk about, I gave you a quick summary of them, and then we talked about 2 of them, and I turned to leave, you'd say, hey, what about the 3rd thing? You become my safety net, so I don't forget it, get back to my desk or go back to dinner and think, I wanted to talk about something else. You act as an extra sort of memory and safety net for pulling that back into the conversation. And I've had that happen a few times and heard others sort of repeat that back to me, that, oh yeah, that saved me from walking away and not talking about the other important thing that we needed. So extra little bonus benefit.
So it also seems like at some point, depending on the nature of the conversation, something totally divergent might come up, which is very important. because of what it is that we weren't thinking about. It wasn't on our plate, so to speak. And then that way we can make a note of it and move forward with that at another point in time instead of diverging off of what we started with, right?
Yep. Yeah. And again, using sort of a structure in your conversation to acknowledge there's something new. Like, that's really important. Yeah. We definitely want to talk about that. Can we finish talking about the first thing, get that out, and then we can focus on this new topic? And the flip side is, yes, that's important. Let's pause on that first topic, deal with this, but we'll remember to come back to that other thing, the original purpose of the conversation. So it can go either way, but verbalizing it sort of names it and gives it a structure, which means it's clear when a conversation has gone from one topic to another, and that helps both parties stay on track.
So it sounds like the very bottom line is clarity. Whoever the instigator of the conversation is needs to be absolutely clear on what they want and what direction they're going, what their proposed outcome might be, even if that might not happen, but they have to have an idea what direction they want to go. Yes. So now, if anybody wanted to further engage with you or learn any more about this process so that they can up-level their leadership, how can they go about doing that?
Oh, well, they can get a copy of the First Minute. It's got a lot in there and a lot more in there. Beyond that, my social hangout is LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect with me there and ask questions. I answer everyone directly. And then there's a lot of information and resources on my website, which is chrisfenning.com, and some great freebies for how to learn and apply these methods in work and in different situations too.
So we'll make sure those links are down in somewhere below this page here where people are going to be watching this interview so they can readily access them. Is there any type of material or information that you have available for people that they can maybe download and start working on this process right now?
Yes, go to my website and I'm giving away a copy of the workbook that accompanies the First Minute. And it normally goes for about $30 and it's totally free. So you can get that and learn. It gives a good overview of the methods and shows how to practice, and includes a few self-assessments as well. So looking at how you communicate and seeing how you do against these methods and some things that we didn't get to talk about today. So it's a great resource to start with, and it's directly applicable to what you communicate at work and at home every day.
All right. That sounds like a plan. I'm sure many people are going to take advantage of that. So I have one last question for you. If you were stuck on a desert island and you could only eat one meal until you got survived, what would that meal be?
A charcuterie board. A charcuterie board with the meats, the cheese, the olives, the pickles, the bits of salad. Yeah, that I could eat that all day long, every day. Yeah.
And you've got most of the food items are covered in there, right?
It is. It feels like a little bit of a cheat, but it's also hands down my favorite meal as my go-to. If there's a charcuterie board nearby, I'm happy.
You're happy. So we'll make sure you get a case of them when you get stuck on that desert island.
Right. Thank you.
So, folks, this is Chris Fenning. He's been nice enough to come and talk to us about the First Minute, how to get that conversation, that clear conversation moving along. We've discussed several things. First of all, as the instigator of the conversation, we need to be clear in what we want. Chris has given us some ideas of how we can work through that process and identified some places where we can go and look up more information. So, Chris, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to add?
I have one last tip. And if I could wave my magic communication wand, this is the one tip that I wish everyone could learn immediately. When you have a quick conversation with someone, don't start it by saying, "Hey, do you have a minute?" Because it usually takes us longer than a minute to get to the point, let alone have that conversation. And when we ask for a minute, we're setting ourselves up to miss a deadline that we've given ourselves. And that's daft. Set yourself up for a deadline that you can achieve. Ask for the other person for the amount of time you think you need. If it's 3, 5, 10 minutes, say that. So my magic communication wand, everybody, don't ask for a minute. Ask for the actual amount of time that you need. And you'll have a better conversation because of it.
Well, that's very good. And that's also part of the clarity process. If we know what we're talking about, we know more than likely the odds are good. It will take more than a minute.
Yes.
So let's preface that conversation by asking for that time. All right, Chris, I thank you very much for your time and your energy.